Hey YouTubers, Irate Prostate here. I just wanted to start off by saying I've been thinking quite a while about one of my favorite things. I've always been a fan of horror, sci-fi, thriller type related films. It's a genre that's really near and dear to my heart. I've been a freak for this stuff ever since I was a kid. I remember going to the drive-in with my dad. We'd usually go on a weekly basis and watching movies by the likes of H.G. Lewis, Roger Corman, British Invasion, Hammer films, the movies like the Dracula, Frankenstein, and Mummy stuff with Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, in some of Corman's Edgar Allan Poe takes, very psychedelic stuff, so it's really influential. It kind of, seems the way that I've, videotaped my show is influenced by the Roger Corman stuff, actually, if you want to know where the kind of the psychedelic thing comes from. I've always dug that. Old Boris Karloff movies. I saw Night of the Living Dead at the age of 6, and that's where I could not sleep for a week, And it was really weird because I was writing this script, and as I was doing it, I found out that day we lost George Romero. He passed away from lung cancer. He was a creator that redefined a genre. Before his deal with Night of the Living Dead, zombie movies were basically more like of a voodoo type thing, and zombies were like, people that were kind of hypnotized. They weren't really the living dead, but he created a whole genre where we have these creatures that reanimate after death, and they have a desire to eat human flesh. And there's just a ton of movies, TV shows based around this one man's vision. A lot of people will say, well, horror movies, science fiction movies, things like that aren't really artistic medium, and I really argue with that because that's BS. You can make there's so much commentary on humanity and a lot of times politics, things like that. Inside some of these movies, and a really well done movie will make a political statement or make a statement about humanity, mores, things like that, and you won't know it until you think about it really deeply. What's going to happen when the genius of filmmakers like Ridley Scott, Takashi Miike, John Carpenter, Dario Argento, David Cronenberg, Tobe Hooper. What's going to happen when these guys are no longer with us to share their visionary genius with? Some of the people that I mentioned, they're not even really doing a lot of stuff right now, some of those guys. So, we got current masters, like Eli Roth, James Wan, Adam Wingard, Rob Zombie, even Scott Derrickson. And what happens when even these guys get long in the tooth? What's behind this bunch? Well, who is going to carry this genre into the 20s and into the 30s? What direction is the genre going to take? What's horror going to look like when I'm long gone? This video is going to be an introduction to a series that's going to dominate my channel. I'll still have content based on current events and things that strike me, in the moment of the zeitgeist. I think that the skeptic community is pretty well represented, right now. And there's not much that I can really add to it, that hadn't already been said or done. So I have a more educated palate when it comes to, horror and entertainment. Some of the stuff that I plan on doing are going to take a cursory look at certain works and creators, while others we're going to do what's called a deep dive. I'm going to get into specific works that I believe are significant or important works that people need to take notice of. And this first thing that I'm doing, I'm going to be focusing on a brilliant director from South Africa. He was born in South Africa, named Neill Blomkamp. He's made such horror, sci-fi, thriller films as District 9, Elysium, and Chappie, which was really well taken. All three are fantastic movies. He's taken a page from the likes of Warhol's The Factory, and a creative collective called Stratford-on-Avon, and that he has located several different creative minds in a somewhat communal location that he's calling Oats Studios. And what makes this stand out is that their work is accessible here on YouTube, actually, at no cost to you or me. That's what's awesome about it, is that the stuff that they're creating, they're putting it out there. It amazes me, you know, how they can do this and, you know, and stay afloat, but they're doing it. And it's really awesome stuff. You know, when you gather several creative minds in a collective situation, you're going to get cutting edge work, you know, work that would have never emerged from a single mind because of the synergy that exists, you know, through that, you know, what I call cross-pollination. And this theory is holding out to be right in this case, I think. The major works are short features that are 20 to 25 minutes in length. The first short that they released was about a month ago, and it's already got over 3.5 million views on it, so it's worth seeing. It's excellent. It's called Rakka, and that's I learned it was Japanese for the word to fall. It takes place in what appears to be, you know, what's left of Texas and after a catastrophic alien invasion. This is a surreal and slightly disturbing saga. It stars Sigourney Weaver and a solid group of recognizable character actors. It depicts a bleak futuristic vision of an alligator-type reptilian alien race enslaving and experimenting on humans while they, quote, modify, aka poison, our atmosphere to make the planet more inhabitable, you know, for their race. Also, the aliens have apparently some type of mild telekinetic ability in addition to their stronger telepathic ability. They can remote control people. When you make eye contact with them, they can literally, you know, come into your mind and puppet you, you know, usually like a marionette. So, you know, out of this, there's a rebellion, you know, a human rebellion that's taken place, and they come up with these things called brain locks. It's kind of a bootleg technology that prevents the telepathic invasion of the aliens. Also, the aliens have hacked, that they've done their experiments on. They rarely live, but the ones that do, they have these side effect abilities that I don't think the aliens are really aware of. I'm going to cut off the description right here. I need to give you an incentive to go to the YouTube page and check this amazing short out. It's awesome. The second video that Oats Studios released is called FIREBASE, and that was released roughly 2 weeks ago, and at this point in time, 1.5 million views. FIREBASE is staged in Vietnam at the height of the Vietnamese War. There's a different type of threat that's dealt with in this short. FIREBASE contains some obvious and respectful nods to movies like Apocalypse Now, Hamburger Hill, and Full Metal Jacket. And if I were in the same shoes, I would be tempted to do exactly the same thing. The only thing missing is the nod to Dennis Hopper's insane photojournalist. It's fourier than Rakka. FIREBASE opens with what appears to be, we're watching some kind of 16 or 8 millimeter film that's been made by secret military intelligence. It opens up with footage of napalm drops, and you know, it's obviously they're trying to destroy something with fire. You know, big swatches of land. And it cuts to like a group that's on the ground. We're deep in the Vietnamese jungle. It looks normal, and then we see things aren't quite right. You know, dead Viet Cong soldiers, when they start examining them, they start looking misshapen. Bodies in the process of shedding skin. And when you look at the skeletons, they look kind of insectoid, you know, almost like a praying mantis type forelimbs instead of, you know, normal forearms, and their skulls are nothing human. Completely unrecognizable. You know, not even mammalian. The film continues to reveal disjointed images, a Huey helicopter in mid-flight being dismantled in the air, floating soldiers, and then this little 16 millimeter film ends with a stamp that says CIA with the inscription that says Omega event, 15,212 fatalities, 2,425 vehicles destroyed. And then when this little 16 millimeter film ends, our story begins. We meet Sergeant Hines, who we see with a headband, and he's armed with a huge pointed stick. You know, the source of all this carnage is something that the Vietnamese locals are calling the river god. Hines learns its name from the CIA agent, this plainclothes guy named Palmer. He's played by Nick Ryan. Hines is played by an actor named Steve Boyle. These names may not come to mind right now, but if you see when you see their faces, you'll recognize who I'm talking about. Palmer takes him to this guy named Corporal Bracken, who is the only survivor of a direct encounter with this being called the River God. He's bald, he's scarred from what looks like he's been hit by some kind of flamethrower or something. Bracken into Hines, he recalls what happened to him. And what he describes defies common sense, of course. And then after the visit with Bracken, Palmer tells Hines that they're going to go hunt down and kill the river god. Can you kill a god with a pointed stick? I don't know. But I want you to really seriously check it out. Watch FIREBASE. A review of FIREBASE by Mr. H directed me to this channel. And as soon as I watched FIREBASE, I watched everything that was on the channel. There's a great Ginzu knife ripoff, hilarious. And there's this little thing with God in the Serengeti. It's funny as hell. Mr. H, I want to thank you sincerely for turning me on to this stuff. Something, Mr. H, I want you to know, you sound a lot like Irate Bear, and I just wonder if there's a connection between you two. But anyway, I got a lot of gratitude. Thanks, Mr. H. At the top of the Oats Studios page, when I went and saw the FIREBASE, it said Zygote, and it had a release date of 7/12/17. And so I waited, patiently for this. And on the 12th, I caught the Zygote 15 minutes after Oats had uploaded it. And wow, was it worth the wait. The backstory for Zygote is explored in a little deeper in a separate video. That's not quite 2 minutes long. And, but it's not necessary to see, and it's not necessary information, but I'm going to throw in a little bit in here, just to give it a little bit to mention. Zygote takes place in the 2050s, roughly, and this has happened after the Northern Hemisphere has been pummeled by meteors containing new elements, metals, and minerals. The mining companies are the new super corporations, and the economy relies solely on these elements and technologies, pretty much. The story starts in a closed facility in what seems to be an emergency. Power blinking on sporadically on and off. Lighting's flashing as an alarm rings throughout the facility. It's revealed that there was a crew of 98, and the screen tells us that the current living crew members is down to 2, male and a female. We see them, enter a room, sit down at a table. A man is named Quinn. He's played by Jose Pablo Cantillo, and he had been in Chappie, and I think he was in Elysium too. So he's one of Blomkamp's go-tos. And he's a great actor anyway. He's got a bandage wrapped around his head, gets covered his eyes, and his eyes appear to be injured of some kind because it's dried blood, right here. And it's very prominent on his cheeks. The woman is named Barclay, and that's played by Dakota Fanning, the once child actress. She's pretty much a grown woman now. She assists him, but, she brings him some food, some water. They're apparently being pursued by some kind of unnamed entity, and they got a moment to rest and spitball some kind of plan to get out of the situation that they're in, because they're up in the Arctic and they need to figure out a way to get away from this thing. They decide to go across the property to another building and secure what referred to as a safe room, that the corporation provides for upper management. Quinn thinks they can get there and stay safe until rescue transport can get them out of there. Quinn tries to give Barclay an assault weapon, and she refuses, citing that she's programmed, or more like conditioned, not to handle weapons. She is what is called a canary class synthetic. She's designed to go deep into these meteorite mine shafts, testing for poison gases, like a proverbial canary in a coal mine. Her job is to literally drop dead in order to save lives. Think about that for a second. Quinn refutes her apprehension and biometrically unlocks the rifle, allowing her to operate it. And he gives it to her and says, work it, and so she takes it on his command, and she, he shows her how to use it. And as the story goes along, Quinn is giving us bits and pieces about what led up to this predicament. You know, how something embedded in an asteroid that they were mining infected one by one everybody in the camp except, you know, Quinn and Barkley. Everyone that gets infected by this psychically and physically binds together. And so, you know, for every addition, the mass of the creature or whatever it is increases. What we learn is that this creature that is pursuing these people is a terrifying mass of limbs, torsos, and eyes. Quinn has been exposed, he reveals later, and is starting to show signs of infections. You know, we realize that, you know, that's what happened to his eyes, is that as soon as he was infected, it comes in through the eyes. He had cut his eyes out, but that wasn't enough. He was too late. I'm going to stop here too on this one because, you know, this is obviously this short feature is an intense, pulse-pounding love letter to John Carpenter's The Thing, and it really works really well. I loved it. A fourth featurette called Lima is scheduled to close Volume 1 in the Oats Studios' initial series of shorts. Lima is described as a thriller that takes place in the modern day, so it's kind of a vague description, and the debut is going to be announced at a later time. From what I've gathered, Volume 1 is generate ideas for possible movies, TV series, and Volume 2 is you're going to focus on bigger ideas, you know, because it's like Volume 1, they're kind of getting their footing, you know, relating to each other, you know, kicking off, you know, finding out how each other works. So you can see how the team is getting tighter and tighter as each, you know, video, you know, reveals. And so the Volume 2 is, you know, they're going to focus on bigger ideas and have a larger budget. I'm really excited about this group of people because they're doing a fantastic job. And I really am grateful that Neill Blomkamp has had the vision to create an atmosphere for all these creative minds to synergize and to give us this next step in horror and sci-fi. I'm really pumped up about these guys. You know, I'm going to close out here saying that, you know, go to their page. I'm going to have it linked at the bottom. In closing, Oats Studio should fire up any fan for the future of the sci-fi fantasy horror genre. I'm thoroughly excited and extremely optimistic about these short features. Along with the vignettes on their YouTube page, I've watched all 3 of these videos at least 4 or 5 times maybe, and I've seen FIREBASE 9 times. I love Vietnam. I love war stuff, so it kind of reminds me of this comic book that used to come out called Weird War Tales. It was when I was a kid. I read it out all the time. Downstairs, okay. I'm going to have links for Oats Studios' YouTube page as well as their company page. I'm also going to provide links to each of the Volume 1 videos that we've covered in this video in the order that they've been released. Please subscribe if you haven't already and hit that like button because I know if you've made it this far, you must be digging this shit, all right? So if you're like me, talking about this subject is near and dear to my heart, and I have a deep dive covering a recently released incredible full-length horror feature planned to lay down in the next couple of days. A deep dive, you know, like I said earlier, is what I'm going to call things that examine these movies in great detail. Let's get a conversation going in the comment section. And until next time, Daterludes, Irate out.